this little bit right here, that bit where you just said that third child was a little bit difficult, and we're going to give that to her on her 21st birthday. That's going to be the thing we're going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's just like the angel of the four. I love all my kids, but there's
You
some
can't
special
back it
about
up
her.
now. You can't back it up now. You've already said she was the problem child.
Yeah, she is the problem child. She can say anything she wants, and that's the problem. But yeah, so no, you just got to work together. It's those people who try to do it all or feel like they, are shouldn't do anything. My dad was one of those. You don't need to know how to change a diaper. You're never going to do that kind of men. And I'm just like, the 1950s called. They want their attitudes back. But yeah,
It's not an unexploded munition. It's just a diaper, right?
it's just a diaper. Kids are awesome, dude. Kids are just. There's nothing better in life than kids, and I understand that you guys don't have any, and that's totally a valid decision. And of course, I'm speaking from my point of view. But I love my kids. I wouldn't trade them for anything.
That's a shame because you can get a good price for them on like the black market. But hey, All right.
I'm not that broke yet. Maybe this next book doesn't work.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. So speaking of next books, what are you working on at the moment?
I'm pretty sure I can tell you the title. I'm just not 100% sure that's going to be the final title, but I'm 99.9% sure, especially since Becky likes it so much. It's called Forge of Heroes, and it's part of a new series called The War from Astaria, and it's a lit RPG portal fantasy with harem elements set in an alternate world.
That
I
sounds
see your eyes going wide.
No, like I was going, okay, so there's like a A to B and a B to C and a C to D, and I was just going, yeah, no, that sounds like something I'd like to read. So you write pretty much, well, where I discovered your writing was like superhero, right?
Mm-hmm. I've got 11 superhero books.
So that's your thing, right? So what made you want to write a lit RPG?
Well, I work on my craft, right? Every time I write a book, I'm trying to look at a way to improve. I'm afraid of stagnating. You know what I mean? I'm afraid of sitting on my laurels, and all of a sudden I'm one of those authors who are like, my books aren't selling anymore. Why aren't my books selling? It's all Amazon's fault. And not that I know anybody like that, but and sometimes it might be Amazon's fault. It's hard to say. I have this sort of attitude of it's always my fault, because if it's somebody else's fault, there's nothing I can do about it. And so I'll take breaks sometimes, and I'll write something new other than superheroes, and sometimes it's stuff that gets published, and sometimes it's stuff that doesn't. But I find it easier to expand my abilities and my craft when I'm working on something brand new that I've never worked on before. Arsenal and the Wraith are they're my bread and butter, and I love them. And apparently my fans do too, because I've got my milestone I just passed was 35,000 books read. So I'm really like, that just number boggles my mind. But it's hard for me to experiment with them and change things and try to be better. And so one of my biggest chimeras I've had for a long time is book length. I just, 55,000 words and the story starts wrapping up, and, I might get to 60,000 words, but that's it. That's where the story says it needs to end. And I'm a big believer of not artificially inflating word count.
Preach.
Or cutting things unnecessarily just because I feel like it should be cut or short or whatever. I have really good pacing. My fans tell me that all the time, that they feel like the books are really, really short, even though they're, take generally 4 hours to read. Which, granted, is probably kind of a short book, but at the same time, they always think they're shorter than they really are. And that's pacing, it's pacing. It's keeping things moving and keeping the story going. But I really want to write a book that hits 100,000 words, and I've wanted to for a long time. And so I read a lot of lit RPG. I was a huge fan of Michael Scott Earl before they booted him, and J. A. Cipriano, who was also booted. And you're just showing this to your people, right? You're not like, Okay, unjustly so.
This might go viral on YouTube. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, maybe. But in my opinion, unjustly so. But I love, they're fantastic writers. And, I've never really been into fantasy. I've always loved science fiction, but science fiction is a tough nut to crack right now. So, and lit RPG is like right up my alley. We both play a lot of the same games, and it's like, hey, it's a video game. And then you add in how popular harem is right now, and while all my books will always be clean, I'm never going to write, erotic or anything like that. There are plenty of clean harem books, and I don't know, there's something about it. It's fun to write. You get all these really cool characters. Up until this point, all of my main characters have always been women, so this is my first male protagonist. Yes, my first male protagonist of something I'm intending to publish anyways. And I've got these great secondary female characters that are just totally awesome, and yeah, I'm having a blast with it. This morning I hit 60,000 words, and the story's probably another 30,000 words before it's done, and that's probably going to be book 1 of 6.
Nice. Speaking as a middle-aged white man, I think you do women quite well.
Thank you.
I very much enjoyed.
I'm not sure what you being white has to do with understanding women. I don't think men understand women in general, but middle-aged part, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, totally. Especially like when I read your first Amelia Lockhart book, right?
Arsenal.
I was very much impressed with. She was, kick-ass. She's a superhero, right? But she goes through the story still having doubts. She's still wondering if that guy thinks she's cute. All those kinds of things were very real, but not. You didn't spread it on too thick. Like I think we've talked before. I have an allergic reaction to first-person books, mostly because you're inside this person's head, right? And all you can see is their line of thought going on. And so often the author will go really deep into a particular line of self-flagellation, and I'm just like, no, I understand what's going on. Whereas Amelia doesn't do that. She's like, oh, I've got this good friend over here, got this guy I've got a crush on. By the way, I've got a suit of powered armor, and I think that was a very good way of constructing her. I think it read very well.
Well, I put a lot of work into learning how to write women correctly, and this comes as a shock to a lot of people. But oops, laptop almost fell. This comes as a shock to a lot of people, but men and women are actually quite different. Mm-hmm. And so my big thing is when trying to figure out how to write a woman realistically and have her feel like a woman to other women. And one of the best compliments I ever got was this reader sent me a message saying, "Hey, are you really a man?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm really a dude. Here's my picture." And she's like, I can't believe that because I've read books by men before where they write women, and you don't ever mention the main character's boobs, not once. How is that possible? And I was like, well, my wife assures me that women don't go through the day thinking about their boobs and boob size and stuff. And I've talked to a number of women who also assure me that the only time they think about their boobs is when they take off their bras at night and they're sore. So and then having read like a million books by guys where it's all like, oh, my boobs, and I'm like, that's probably not a thing I want to put in there if I'm trying to have a serious main character who is a woman. And being a red-blooded male, of course I'm attracted to that sort of thing, but, story comes first. And so I crafted Amelia a very specific way with a very specific set of needs and wants, and I let her loose on the world. And, it worked out really great. She processes things emotionally before she processes them logically. And I have male readers who get upset about that sometimes, and they say, why is she acting so dumb? I'm like, she's not acting dumb, you moron. No offense to my readers. As a guy, you think you process things logically first, and then you process them emotionally, and women do the opposite. But what I've come to learn in my life is that nobody's actually logical. We just all think we're logical. I'm getting off on a tangent here, but basically I set up a character, I wound her up, and I let her go. And she's her own character. She's her own person. Amelia is as real to me as anybody else in my life. Same thing with Kate and the rest of the team. was never quite happy with how I handled Luke. I felt Luke was a little one-notey, but he grew on me. So
I think this is a good time to talk a little bit about I have a bunch of things I want to talk to you about with your superhero thing, and I want to get what I think with you. So when you wrote Madison, she's quite different from Amelia, right?
She'd have to.
Yeah, and I really want to understand why you wanted to write her, and then how, spoiler free, how you were thinking that you might bring those two threads together, because you're going to have fans of this one, you're going to have fans of this one. Hopefully there's a lot of intersection on the Venn diagram, but there might not be. How are you planning to handle all that?
Well, I'm going to handle that in reverse order.
Okay, all right.
So the bringing them together was an experiment, and it's been a smashing success. I found after writing 3 Wraith books, and that's who Madison is, Madison Dumas, the Wraith.
Sorry, I should have said that. My bad.
That half of my readers half the people who read the Wraith books had never read Arsenal. Mm-hmm. And the same, then vice versa. Half people who read Arsenal had never read the Wraith. I did not get a lot of cross-pollination. Probably even less than half, to be honest. And there's a number of reasons for that. When I chose to do the Wraith, I chose first-person past tense as opposed to present tense. I chose that for Arsenal because I really love the Hunger Games, and I was kind of going for that sort of immediate feel. But I grew as a writer and realized that maybe I should have done past tense, and so I thought, hey, there's people who don't like first-person present tense, who like superhero novels. Yeah, I know you suck. And so I'll write a second one that's first-person past tense, and then maybe I'll get some people who won't read Arsenal who will read the Wraith. And then it worked really well. It worked great. I got to book 8 in Arsenal, and it ended with them meeting. I don't know if you read just the last part where they met, but basically it's the very last scene in the book. It's the last part of the epilogue, and she comes to Amelia and she's like, I need your help. There's an alien. And
spoilers.
Well, I mean, it's superhero books. If you don't know superhero books are gonna have aliens in them, I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, aliens, time travel, superpowers. This is what superheroes are about. And the fan response for Arsenal Reloaded, which is the book that has the Wraith in it, was just off the charts. It's one of my. It's weird to have book 8 be one of my best-selling books, but it is. I'm going to have my record month here probably because of it. And so Wraith 4, which is called Danger Close, comes out at the end of next month, and that's what I'll be working on next when I'm done with my lit RPG.
Nice. That is okay. Yep.
I didn't answer part of your question.
No, it's fine. I think that
covered it.
I think that covers it. I would like to understand. So you have you've got 4 kids. Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm reminded of Justin Cronin wrote the Passage trilogy. I don't know if you've read that, but it's a very good trilogy about a 14-year-old girl who saves the world. And it's a post-apocalyptic. There are vampires, not traditional vampires. No, see your face right there was my face. So somebody came up to me and said, "You need to read this book. This book is the most amazing book that's ever been written." And I'm like, the cover is a bit shit. And I turned it over and I read the back, and I'm like, I don't want to read another book with a 14-year-old and vampires. I'm just not interested. No. And I tossed it away. I didn't actually pick it up until I was on vacation, and I was in a, let's just say, cabin in the woods type environment, right? So there's no cell coverage, there's no Wi-Fi, there's barely electricity, right? And there's a bookshelf there, and in the bookshelf is an old copy of The Passage, and it looks like it's been read about 490 times, right? This thing looked like it had been eaten by a dog and then spat back out, and I'm like, it's the only book on the bookshelf that looks like it's had that kind of treatment, so I'm just going to help myself, right? So I sat down, opened the book up, and I'm like, okay, Richards, 14-year-old girls, there's vampires, get ready for the sparkling. Okay, that's what I thought was going to happen. It's nothing like that. It is a book where people get brutally murdered in really horrible ways, and the 14-year-old girl part of it is a strong thread throughout all three books, but the story is about, it feels a bit Game of Thrones like. It's got like 900 people as part of the cast, and all of the main vampires were ex-prison row inmates, subjected to a science experiment, yada, yada, yada. It's a very good read. Anyway, so I'm going somewhere with this. I don't want to sell Justin Cronin's The Passage to you. If you check it out, it's a good book. But he wrote that book because his daughter said to him, "Why are there no books where little girls save the world?" And he's like, "You know what I'm going to do?
I'm going to solve that by writing a book you can't read."
That's right. You can't read it until you graduate from college. That's the rule. You can't write that.
Yeah.
Once you're married with 3 kids yourself, you can read this book. So what was your, very long way of asking the question, was your family, were they an inspiration to write your believable and credible yet inspiring female heroes?
Well, I have a very super smart wife who has probably done more to educate me and inspire me to educate myself than the school system over here ever did. And so I hope one day she'll read my things. She doesn't now, but I hope one day she will.
Mm-hmm.
And when she reads them, I want her to be like, okay, I'm proud of him for writing that. I want my kids to read it. I want them to say, I'm proud of my dad for writing that. John and Julia, my oldest, Julia's my 16-year-old and John's my 13-year-old. They both read my superhero stuff. Like, John's like, give me the rough draft. I don't care. Just give it to me right now. I need it, and he stays up all night reading it. And then Julia's a little bit slower reading it. She's catching up. But I want them to come away from it, and I want them to have realistic depictions of women and men and relationships that are, good people doing good things because it's the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. Hope is a big word in my life, and I went a lot of years without any, and very pessimistically, and very bitter about the world, and I shed that person, and part of my author journey is only happened because I shed that person. I mean, I couldn't do what I do if I hated every second of every day. So yeah, my kids and my wife are a huge inspiration. Amelia's half Hispanic because my wife's half Hispanic. Madison's wholly created on my own. I didn't base her on anybody other than a person I created. So I took the name from a friend of mine, this teenage girl I know who's really cool and loves guns. And so I thought the way she spelled her name was really cool with the UN at the end. And so I borrowed that. Dumas is a nod to the Three Musketeers. Loved those books as a kid. And he was black. So, it worked out because Madison's black. And, but yeah, Madison's I had a superhero who went into space and fought aliens and gods and whatnot. I needed someone who was, if that didn't appeal to somebody, I was like, well, what would? And the Punisher would, right? If you're not interested in Iron Man, then you might be interested in the Punisher. But I didn't want to do the Punisher because as much as I like the Punisher, Frank has problems that I didn't want to work on.
Dude is going to be in therapy for a long time.
Well, it's a story that's well told, right? And so I said, well, what if I took somebody who wasn't ex-military or at all in any way combat ready and then put them in a situation like Frank was in, and then, gave her a mentor who was a lot more like Frank, but also like the Batman and John Wick combined. And then, what if it was like throwing a little bit of venom and have her be possessed by something that gives her superpowers that also wants to kill things, like in a bad way. And that sort of all came together, and the Wraith was born, and it was awesome, and she's immensely fun to write. But I feel like where Frank fails, Frank's all dark and gritty, and I love it, don't get me wrong. I love him beating up child molesters with a baseball bat and shooting people in the face who deserve it.
It gets old, yep.
Yeah, it never gets old, right? Because the thing about the Punisher that is so rewarding is that you are watching somebody get theirs that wouldn't normally get theirs in the real world.
And who desperately deserves to get theirs as well. Like we all want.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not like he's killing people who ran the red light or something. I mean, he's killing really bad people. So I wanted that. I wanted to use that, which is why human trafficking is such a theme throughout the whole books, because, nobody's going to miss human traffickers. But at the same time, I didn't want her to be all bitter and angry and sad and morose and angsty. And Frank's a little angsty, and Batman's a little angsty. And I wanted her to be more like John Wick, right? John Wick is just, I'm going to go into this building, and I'm going to kill you all, and you're all going to die. And
Nothing personal,
right? Nothing personal, right?
Except for that guy who killed my dog.
Right, yeah. And so what I tried to do was sort of mix all of them together. So Madison has this great optimistic attitude. She's happy-go-lucky. She cracks jokes, but she's also a brutal, merciless killer of men, and she is judge, jury, and executioner. And if she shows up at your door, you did something to deserve it, and you're going to die because she doesn't know how to quit.
Who is your, slight segue here,
Sure.
Who is your favorite actor who's played the Punisher?
The last guy.
Oh, really?
I can't think of his name, but for the TV show, the Netflix show, friggin' loved him. That show's failings were the writers and the directors and Netflix's fault. It had nothing to do with that actor. The actor was amazing. He brought an emotion to Frank that is just beautiful. There's a scene in the first season where they have him, the Irish mob has him tied to that chair, and they're like drilling his foot, and he's making fun of them and crap, and just sets them all up and plays them for fools. And that is my favorite part of that kind of character, is that I feel like Frank isn't a loose cannon. He just doesn't run down the street shooting people and hope everything works out. So one of the things that drives me nuts is when you have a character like Batman or Punisher or John Wick, who are so good at planning and having all their T's crossed and their I's dotted. Drives me nuts when something happens that they weren't ready for. And that's how the story progresses or whatever. So I wanted to make sure Madison, like, she didn't enter. There was this old movie called Ronin with Robert De Niro, fantastic movie. He said in a line once, he's like, I never walk into a room I don't have a way out of. And that's Madison. So she has this motto that she says, and the motto is, luck is not a plan. So luck is not a plan.
I used to work with somebody who said that as hope is not a strategy. And I quite like them too. Yeah.
Yeah, hope is not a strategy. So if she's in a room and you think you got the better half of her, you're right where she wants you.
Having said that, my dad had a line too. He's a U.S. Navy pilot, and he said that he would trade luck for skill every time.
Wait, you mean luck for skill or skill for luck?
He would give up his skill for luck.
Yeah, skill for luck. Yeah, I have an old buddy of mine who was one of the first Navy SEALs in Vietnam, and I told him he should write a book called "Better Lucky Than Good," because he told me some stories, and I was just like, "There's just no reason you should have lived through that." And he's like, "Oh, I know, being in a river, ambushed with his foot stuck on a branch underneath the water." And there were so many bullets hitting the water around him, it looked like it was raining, but it wasn't raining. And he was in the open, and nothing hit him. Better lucky than good. The nice thing about writing fiction, right, is you get to craft the situations and sort of as realistic and as accurate as they feel. They really all are all crafted and probably wouldn't work in the real world. I have a scene in book 3 where she walks into a nightclub and kills everybody there, and at one point, the bad guy says to her something to the effect of, you've gotten this far on luck, but your luck's run out. And she's like, you think I rely on luck? And that's when she turns the tables on them, and it's all over. So, which is great because I crafted that scene to happen that way so that everything worked. And you read it and you don't think that like, oh, this is plot. Like this is plot armor. One of my favorite words. The only reason she got away with this was because of the plot. No, it seems very realistic and believable to what the character would do and how she would operate. Which doesn't mean she doesn't ever make mistakes or screw up or get caught unawares. It's just the plot doesn't hinge on her being caught unaware.
Yeah, there's actually a good time to jump into your writing process because I kind of want to dig into that a little bit.
Sure.
Because I'm impressed with the way that your books turn out, but we'll get onto that in a minute. I'm reminded of a trope that kicks around a lot where
I hate that word, just so you know.
Trope. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm going to use trope another 9 times now.
Yeah.
So there's a thing kicking
do.
around where people talk about writer's block a lot, and I'm generally not familiar with writer's block. I don't suffer it, but other people do. And there's some advice floating around there that says, when in doubt, introduce a dragon. And it doesn't matter whether you're writing superhero or science fiction or whatever. It's just a placeholder for any sufficiently cataclysmic event to disrupt your characters. But I think that that term you used, what did you say, plot armor? I think if it's added in the wrong way, it can be quite transparent to the readers, in the same way that if you're watching a television show and it appears badly structured and there's just explosions everywhere and there's not really a lot of purpose for it, you can almost get bored. You can almost get bored with kind of watching. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of interested about how you, what I want to go from the macro. So your kind of writing process when you sit down to write your next novel through to the micro, where you. How do you go about constructing? Let's use a fight scene, right? Because I think fight scenes, people find those very difficult to write, and a well-crafted fight scene does not appear to be well-crafted. There's just shit going on, and then dudes are dying or being dismembered, and the reader should just go, oh, yeah, no, that happened. I saw the film in my mind. That's what I saw. Badly written fight scenes. Oh, they're quite painful to go through. So let's do that. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about your the big to the little, any order you like?
Sure. Yeah. Well, plot armor. What plot armor is when you have like stupid things happen that should kill the protagonist, but they don't, because then the story would be over. Mm-hmm. The nuclear bomb goes off, but oh, hey, they're in a fridge. Yeah, I won't say who did that, but
Nicholas. So that was a Indiana Jones movie?
Indiana Jones movie 4, yeah. Plot armor.
And there's my favorite example of that is a terrible movie that I can't remember the name of, starring Nicolas Cage, where he can see
Next,
yep. And spoilers, but the end of that movie was entirely plot armor.
Yeah, they changed the rules at the end, mm-hmm. and there were parts of that movie that I really liked. But yeah, no, they did. They changed the rules at the end, and it was really frustrating. So my process, there's you said add a dragon. There's an old screenplay adage, which is you've gone 10 pages without a car chase, add a car chase. I'm very intuitive writer when I'm writing. And, I have a feel for the ebb and flow of how things are, and so that's sort of how I sort of work my way through my books is sort of by feel. So you want me to go from the macro, though, to the micro on a fight scene, or the whole book?
Let's talk about the macro on the whole book, and then we'll hone down to the micro on, say, a specific. It doesn't have to be a fight scene; it can be an action scene. Right?
Okay. So for the whole book, usually what I'll do is I'll come up with an idea. I mean, we're writers, right? I mean, if we could stop coming up with ideas, I think sometimes we would. Mm-hmm. And it's the dumbest question ever to ask a writer, by the way, is how do you come up with your ideas? They don't stop coming.
No.
I wake up in the middle of the night like, oh, hey,
Never a shortage of ideas, only a shortage.
I concocted this entire murder the other day in a restaurant, looking at somebody who was there waiting for somebody. I'm like, oh, he probably had his wife killed, and this is his alibi.
Do you do that thing? Do you do that thing? I can't stop this, so I walk into a restaurant or a cafe, or I'm waiting for the bus or whatever, and I will start telling myself stories about the people who are around me. That guy's a CIA agent. That person killed their mother in the bathtub. I will go through the whole. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not quite that bad. I don't do it for everybody, but if someone sticks out to me, or if I'm bored, if I got time to think, all of a sudden, these like whole movies will pop in my head, and it will just be like, please stop. Can I have an empty space for 5 minutes? But so what I'll do is like I'll know I need to write a book, and either it's a sequel or it's a new series, and I'll think, okay, what do I want people to feel when they've read the book? I want you to be hopeful when you read Arsenal. I want you to feel like, there's hope in the world, that the things are going to be better. That's how I want you to feel when you're done reading Arsenal. Most times. Sometimes I want you to be sad, and I achieve that quite well. With Wraith, I wanted you to feel that sense of justice, right? I'm very careful with Wraith about it. It's not revenge. It's justice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not punishment. It's justice. People are getting their just desserts. And you feel a way, you feel the certain way in your chest and your heart when you see somebody get their just desserts that makes you feel good, you know? And so that was my feeling for Wraith. For the lit RPG, I'm going for wonder. I want you to feel like a sense of wonder, like, wow, this is so cool. This could be me. I wish this was me. I wish this was happening to me, kind of thing. So that's usually how I start a book, is how do I want people to feel? And then I start coming up with characters and throwing them away, kind of. There's this theory that Becky taught me about called low-hanging fruit. Your first couple ideas are usually your worst. So get rid of them. And so I will come up with some ideas and I'll throw it away. I'll come up with a few more ideas and I'll throw them away. And I'll just keep throwing them away until one sticks. And you know that feeling you get when an idea sticks?
Yep.
It's like, bam, I have to write it right now. And so that's when I start writing. I don't waste time. I get right to it. I usually spend about 5,000 words discovering the main character and the story. Once I figured it out, I go back and start over again. And that's usually the only time I revise. I am a one-and-done author. I do not like revising. I hate editing. It slows everything down, and I feel like I know authors who can write 4 books a month, and you know,
Can they really?
They can. 12,000 words a day, my friend. 12,000 words a day, 6 days a week. I don't know how they do it, but I'm working on it.
MDMA. That's how they do it.
Well, like Michael Cooper, we both know, right? He told me once he's not very fast. He writes about 1,000 words an hour. He just writes for 12 hours a day.
Yeah, he told me the same thing. He does some really long days.
Yeah.
He'll just get up, he'll plug himself in at 7 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes he's still going 7 or 8 o'clock at night.
See, I can't do that. I don't have that luxury. I am on borrowed time right now for this podcast.
Oh, shit.
Because we got kids, right? Mm-hmm. And so I get up at 6 every morning. I try to get started writing by 6:30. I usually finish about noon. I try to get 5,000 words in. That's my goal. That's my recent goal. I built up to that. I used to, when I first started back in 2015, when I got serious about writing, I was doing 1,500 words a day after 5 hours of writing. Now I do that in an hour, 1,500 words an hour. Sometimes I'll edge up to 2,000 words an hour. But I feel like I leveled up with this RPG, or this lit RPG, I was hitting 3,000 words a day, and now I'm averaging above 4, which is great.
Nice.
I like that. I want to get to 5. I want to average 5, so that I'm doing 25,000, 30,000 words a week. And for Arsenal of Wraith, that's a book. That's a book in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. My lit RPGs, I'm aiming for $100,000, so that's a month a book. So that's sort of my process. That's the macro of it. But when it gets down into it, it's really, I was talking about winding my characters up and letting them go. It's really, really important. And if you have anybody in your audience who's wants to be a writer, I cannot stress how important what I'm about to say is. And that is, wait 1 second. No. Sorry, I love that joke. It's so super important. You don't need to know your characters' birthdays or their favorite colors or any of that crap. You don't need to write an essay about what they did when they were in college. I mean, you can if you want. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that stuff is bad. But all of that stuff that you write ingrains into you a character that may not actually work. Mm-hmm. And the more you concrete things you know about a character, the less you can adapt to what the character actually needs to be. I used to try that because all the writers would tell you, oh, write these essays about these characters and who they are and when they were born and blah, blah, blah. And then I go to write the book and I got nothing. And so there are 2 things you need to know about a character before you start writing them. I mean, you don't need to know sex, you don't need to know hair color, you don't need to know bust size, you don't need any of that, right? You need to know what they need in their life. Mm-hmm. And you need to know what they want in their life. Mm-hmm. And those 2 things have to be mutually exclusive. And they have to be things you can state in a sentence. And they have to be specific. It can't be oh, she wants peace on earth. No. 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 She wants justice for her family. She needs justice for her family. And she wants her family back. And she can't have both. So needs and wants. And you know those two things, then every situation you get into, you know exactly how the character will operate because you know what's motivating them. And you hear actors talk about motivation all the time, like it's very highfalutin. What's my character's motivation? But it's actually really, really important. Whenever you're reading a book or watching a movie and all of a sudden the characters are like, what the hell are they doing? It's because now they're plot motivated. They're operating a certain way because of plot and not having anything to do with how they really would. The Last Jedi is a great example of plot-driven characters.
I appreciate this is divisive. I did not like that movie.
No, me either.
I was not a fan.
50% of the population hated that movie.
Yeah.
So, no, everything is plot-driven. Well, the characters don't act like the characters would really act in a real situation. They're all driven by plot, and I hate that. I'd never do that. Or try not to.
What is up with the thing that irritated me the most, that sticks with me to this day, is that so Finn and Rey have got a really good thing going on, right? So really good friends at the end of the first movie, and then for disruptive plot-related reasons, suddenly Finn is interested in what's her name, Grace, I think her name is, and I'm like
Rose,
and I'm like,
fabulous actress, by the way. I thought she did a fine job. It was not.
She was great
at all. It was the writing.
Absolutely, there's no criticism about John Boyega or the actress.
Oh yeah, they were all great. I mean, all of them.
They did a very good job with what they were given. What they were given was a step.
Crap.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a pile of crap. And so whenever you read a book or watch a movie and you're getting that feeling like, why are they suddenly acting so weird? Game of Thrones, the last season. It's because they're
too.
Yeah, it's because they're plot characters now. They're no longer characters. So what you have to be willing to do is you have to be willing to get halfway into your book and realize that this carefully crafted plot you had isn't going to work because your character wouldn't do that. And I know a lot of writers say that stuff like, oh, my character decided to do this or that, and I used to just roll my eyes. And then it started happening to me, and it's actually a good sign. It's a sign that you've developed your characters really well, and so that's what I do. I usually have an end goal in mind when I start writing, like they're trying to achieve something, trying to do something. But honestly, and I'm going to be 100% honest with you, nobody cares about your plot.
No, they really don't.
They just don't. They care about your characters. The plot will hook them, right? Your blurb is the plot, right? Your blurb is talking about the plot and why they should read the book. But if they come back for a sequel, it's because they love your characters, not because they loved your plot. No one ever said, like, he's a great plotter. No, his characters are awesome. And so, yeah, so they come for the plot and they stay for the characters. So you just got to I try to be flexible and understanding the characters' motivations and what they're going to do. And sometimes I hit roadblocks. I don't think I ever actually hit writer's block per se. Not that it's one thing, but there's like a lot of things. Like I have issues with depression that I get that sometimes keep me from writing. And sorry, my Fitbit just beeped at me. But I tend to write no matter what. I wrote an entire book severely depressed, and it was like the book that people liked the least, and they hated it so much they didn't finish the series, which sucked. It was under a pen name, so I was okay. But mostly what I find is if I have writer's block, it's because I've gone in a direction that the plot required, not the characters, and then just have to back up until I'm happy again.
You're forcing it, right? You're trying to stick concrete through a sausage machine. Yep.
Yeah. So so that's my macro level. Micro level, when I'm approaching a fight scene, I was in the Army, as you were, I think, or were you in the Navy?
No. I just do a lot of martial arts.
You were in the military? I thought you were in ANZAC.
No.
Okay.
No.
Well.
No. I mean, obviously,
the
military and my roguish good looks would fit well with the military, but no such.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was in the Army, so I spent 5 years in the Army, and I trained with I'm going to be very clear about this. I was not a Ranger, but I trained with the Rangers. I was a radio guy. I had access and knowledge about these special radios, and so when they were rolling them out in the Army, they signed me to a Ranger unit for a couple of years to teach them how to use them. Lots of fun. Got to do all the cool things like shoot stuff. Didn't get to jump out of airplanes, but got to shoot all the cool guns and hang out with them and eat at their awesome mess hall. 2nd Ranger Bat, Fort Lewis. Amazing. And so I learned a lot about, tactics and firearms from them. And then, it's just something I love doing regardless. I spent the rest of, from then until now reading books about firearms and reading books about tactics. And, I studied martial arts when I was a teenager because I kept getting beaten up. And so I know a little bit about hand-to-hand. I watched videos about things that I need to know about for YouTube's a great resource. Like, I hate them politically, but I mean, they're fantastic resource for, oh, I need to know what it looks like when you stick a thumb in somebody's eye, or I need to know what Krav Maga looks like, and stuff like that.
I found a great video yesterday where a dude is talking about the practicalities of a back-mounted scabbard and how you draw a sword from one of those and how it should work and how it would work. And he discusses all the reasons why it's actually better than a hip-mounted sword. And he goes through all the science and the math behind it, and he shows it, and he got various people drawing and 17 designs for them, and I'm like, I probably couldn't have found that in the book, not easily.
No, not easily, no. So yeah, YouTube is great for that, and so I watch a lot of YouTube for that kind of stuff, especially for girls, learning like what martial arts work best for girls for guys because of the physical differences in our muscular structure and our skeletal structure. And then I'll approach a fight scene with like, hey, what's the coolest thing I could do in this fight scene? For Madison, it's just like the list just goes on and on and on and on. I've got a scene once where she cut some guy's head off a piano wire using his own powers against him. He's a telekinetic, and she knows she's going to attack her with telekinesis, and so she gets the piano wire around his throat the second before he hits her with a telekinetic blast. So, he decapitates himself. Stuff like that. And so I try to, when I'm writing the fight scenes themselves, I try to be fluid and follow a through point. You don't want to be jumping around. When you're fighting a fight scene with multiple different protagonists and antagonists in there, you do need to pause every once in a while to let the audience know what the other people are doing as appropriate, but you can't go into detail about somebody else, especially when you're doing first person. You wrote a fabulous fight scene in Delilah. Delilah,
yep.
Yeah, in the bar.
Yep.
One of my favorite scenes in the book, I'll be honest with you. I love that book.
Oh, thank you.
And I wish you would do more with her because she's amazing. When they're all talking to hire her and like, oh, well, she's like, what did they say? They're like, well, we may not have the money with us. And she's like, well, if you don't, you're all dead.
That's right.
And like, yeah, like, we have the money. So a lot of writing fight scenes is it's sometimes it's you choreograph it, sometimes you feel it, and sometimes you go for shock factor. Sometimes fight scenes are over very, very quick. I've got a scene in a book where the entire book, this character has been staying at somebody else's house, and I kind of made a point about them staying there to the point where you'd almost wonder, like, why are they there? And then at the end of the book, you find out the people's house she's staying at has a daughter who she's been waiting to kill. And, and that's how the book ends. It's, the daughter walks in. The daughter's an evil, evil person. Gets shot in the face 3 or 4 times. Madison tosses the gun on her and walks out. And so that was a really quick fight scene because it wasn't really a fight, but it was a very quick scene. So yeah, so you kind of want to stay loose when you're writing your fight scenes. You do not want to be like, and I made this mistake when I first started writing, you don't want to be like, oh, I hit them across their jaw with my right fist while pivoting on my left foot and bringing my right foot up and back kicking them into the stomach. It's perfectly acceptable to say things like, I punched them, I kicked them, I slammed my fist into their ribs, they jumped up in the air, kneed them in the chin, that kind of thing. If you get too specific, it slows things down. And people talk about sentence length and stuff like that. It's a little bit more complicated than I get into because I'm, again, an intuitive writer. I don't tend to have long sentences to begin with. So, but yeah, if you can shorten your sentence length while you're writing the fight scenes, it makes it choppier and punchier and works out better. The important thing though is you want to have a reason for the fight to happen. You want there to be a purpose. For a fight scene. You just want to have a fight scene to have a fight scene. Sounds cool, especially when you're a teenage boy, but it isn't. It doesn't work. It gets boring. Like you said, it gets boring. But if every scene has a reason for happening, and not just fight scenes, but every scene, and there are stakes for that scene, then it makes everything all the more interesting and more exciting.
I have a phrase I use, which is combat is conversation. So if you've got a fight scene, or any kind of high octane thing, a helicopter crash or something like that. It needs to be part of a conversation that you're having with the reader, right? So you're testing a character, or you're showing them what fear looks like, or it can be between two characters where they're engaged in combat because they really just want to have a conversation, but they're doing it with guns, and that it stops fights being just pulp filler, teenage action boy stuff, and starts it being a device to move the character development along.
Yeah, move the story forward, and it's fantastic when it works that way. And when you can do both, when you can illuminate character and move the story, then you're really, you're moving into the master class as writers. And I won't say every fight scene in all of my books has a ulterior motive. Sometimes I feel like I've gotten to a point in my book and I'm like, 3 chapters and nothing has happened. So it's time for something to happen. I say nothing. Lots of stuff has happened. But when you're writing superhero fiction, people expect a certain level of pew, 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 die. Mm-hmm. And so I try not to disappoint in that respect, but I also try to make them, be cool. And I always try to have, too, on the macro level, I always try to have one moment in every single book, one defining moment that... One of my favorite moments in movies is the you don't know who you're messing with moment. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You get that in some of the John Wick movies. You get that in you get in a lot of movies, really. You don't like Gladiator is my favorite one. When, they put him in that arena and they all expect him to die for the first time, and he just, he rallies those guys and he just owns them. And then he takes his mask off at the end and tells them who he is, and it's just like, you did not know. And that's beautiful. I love that.
Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Yeah. So I like to have a moment like that in every book. In the last one I wrote, Arsenal was fighting these European super team called the Safety Force. And through most of the book, she was handicapped with her armor because she was experimenting with new armor and it wasn't quite working out well. And she finally got it working right. And it's just, this European super team, EU super team, is trying to impose their will upon other superheroes, and she basically says something to the effect of, "It's time you learn the meaning of my name." And yeah, it's just like she took out the entire, just blasted people apart. It was great. And by the time they get to book 8, they're not going to remember it. So spoiler alert, but I mean, you're going to get to book 8, you're going to forget that I ever even said that. So yeah, I try to have those cool moments in the book. So usually around the climax, so that people feel like the book went somewhere. And it left them with just like, oh my gosh, that was awesome feeling at the end of it. Because no matter how good your book is, if you crash the ending, you suck. And that's just, movies, books, TV shows, doesn't matter. You stick the landing, you're great. You don't stick the landing, it doesn't matter what you did before that. Your movie sucked. Your book sucked.
I had a book I released recently, book 8 in my Taiki series, which features...
Love October Cole. Love him.
A lot of people love October Cole, which is one of the reasons why I wrote the 7th book, which is him and the AI Algernon going on a road trip together, and people really, really like that book. Book 8's the one that follows that, and I remember I was trying to give that, I was trying to write it so that people would get that fist pump moment, so they would everything is bad and hard for about half of the book, and I had a fan write to me, and he's like, dude, what's going on, man? Like, there's action and there's, nasty evil space aliens, but what's up with, character X? I'm not going to mention the name, spoilers. But they were like, she's just not like she was in the previous books, what's going on? So I wrote back to them and said, well, she died and lost her mind, and now she's finding out how she is.
It's funny how people forget that stuff matters.
Yeah, how far through the book are you? He's like, 20, 30%. And I said, get to halfway. And halfway is where the fist pump moment is. He wrote back going, that was awesome. So, sometimes you need to, took a little bit of time to get there, but the payoff was worth it.
Yeah. If you ever watch an old Clint Eastwood movie, have you ever seen any of the old Clint Eastwood movies? We're about the same age, I'm assuming you have. They're very slow burns, right? Mm-hmm. Very slow burns. Fistful of dollars for a few dollars more. Mm-hmm. Very slow burns, and then they get to the end, and it's like, oh yeah, Open Range with Kevin Costner and Robert Duvall.
Mm-hmm.
The whole movie is slow until you get to the end, and Kevin Costner looks over Robert Duvall. He's like, you know how I never told you what I did before I met you? He's like, yeah. Well, this is what I did. And he just stands up and quick draws those 6-shooters and shoots a bunch of people, before they have time to even think. And it's just like, those are the moments that you remember from books and movies. And you can have a really well-written book without one of those moments. And it may be memorable. I just don't think that it's likely. So I shoot for those cool, great moments, those great character moments that make you cry or make you cheer. And they're both equally good. In Book 7, Ancient Arsenal, there was a make you cry moment. It wasn't a fist pumping, that was awesome. It was, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that, you bastard. And I got some hate mail off that book. And, it is what it is. And I got people telling me, like, I can't believe Amelia acted so stupid. And I'm just like, dude, she's 22 years old, and something horrific happened to her. And you are expecting her to be so logical and like, work through the problems like math? I mean, that's not how life is. Nobody is that way. One of the great things Marvel did was their relationship with Tony and Steve, and how even though Steve was 100% right for everything he did, and Tony knew it, he still couldn't act the right way because he was feeling it, in his chest. And you could say Tony's being stupid and petty or whatever, but I mean, dude killed his mom. I mean, and he loved his mom. So, I'm talking about Civil War, clearly.
I was following along. Yeah.
So,
might not be.
Well, if you haven't seen Civil War, then I don't know what to tell you. You won't like my books. So you gotta have some sort of iconic, fantastic moment in every book. At least I think you do. That really is the moment when people think about that character. That's the moment they think about. I love those moments. You sticking a shotgun in an alien's face and shoot it. And eat this. When Hudson did that in Aliens, I love that. Stuff like that.
Yeah, I think moments where your reader gets an emotional response is the good thing. Like it doesn't have to be, as you say, it can be a heartfelt joy, it can be sadness, but you want them to feel something as they're reading that story.
The thing is you can't do that right away. You can't do that on page 1. It's really hard to do that on page 1. You can do it a little bit through suffering, making people suffer, because we all sympathize with people who suffer. But the really good, like the really grade A emotional reactions are the ones you get after a couple of books, because you got a reader who's reading book 3, they are invested. If they're on book 6, they are invested. And those characters aren't just characters on a page, they're people to them. There was a study that came out a couple of years ago that said that fictional characters in our minds, to our brain, chemically speaking, were as real people. And so when a fictional character that we love dies, we feel it the way, like, I can't even look at Avengers Endgame right now. I mean, I saw an ad for it on Facebook, and I almost broke down.
I have strong thoughts about, we'll just keep away from spoilers here. I have strong thoughts about who they killed in that movie. But
yeah, no. But yeah, so my point is, though, I felt like I came home from a funeral after watching that movie. And so if I can give people that moments like that in my book, preferably with hope instead of, sadness, great. But if I can do sadness, I'll do that too, because then they'll remember the book. So, yeah, that's kind of my goal for every book.
Sweet. All right. I'm aware that I have chewed up an hour of your time. So
you're fine. I love talking to you.
Okay. We should do this again. But before we do it again, let's wrap this up with a dual factor question that might be related to each other. So the question is, what is it like living with another inspiring creative? And then what is next for Team Haskell?
Well, it's really cool. I mean, I won't say that all my what little success I have is all my own, because if I was like any other person, I'd have to go hire a cover designer. Instead, I just have to beg the cover designer I live with to get to my covers, because she's so busy doing this fan art for this guy, Richard Perry, who's never done fan art for my books, mind you, but, does fan art for his books. You should be. I've been married to her for 17 years, and I can't get her to draw things for me. So she almost didn't show them to me because she was worried that I would be upset, and clearly I'm not upset at all. It's really interesting living with someone who's really creative. Rebecca is one of those people, and when I say she's really smart, I'm not lying here. I mean, I'm not like blowing smoke or anything. She's really smart. She's really well educated. She reads a ton. When she doesn't know something, she goes and learns everything there is to learn about it. She's going to kill me when she sees this because she hates it when I do this. But I have watched that woman over the course of 17 years learn different forms of art because she wanted to, and learn more about it and how to do it than most people do studying the thing their whole life. So when she decided to become a cover designer, doing my covers for my first books, she went from photo manipulation to photo bashing to now full-on illustration. All she does now is illustration. She doesn't do photo manip anymore. So it's pretty awesome, actually, is what it is. It's inspiring because I'm watching her up her game, and I can't help but try to up mine. Not because we compete or anything, but I just, I like respect. I don't want her to think of me as a slacker or anything like that. So I work my butt off to impress her. And kind of like when you're dating, you want to impress the girl, and I still do. I just want to impress her. I long for the moment where she says, "I'm really proud of you," or "I really thought that book was great," or "That was a really good idea." And the opposite of those moments rip out my heart. So.
Mm-hmm. That makes perfect sense. Resonates with me in terms of my own marriage too. It's like when I think about the person I write for, it's my wife. Yes, I've got fans and they're amazing. But the person that I when I sit down to start that book, there's always one person I've got in mind when I start writing that.
Well, that's awesome. See, and does Ray read your stuff? It's Ray, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she does.
So, yeah, unfortunately, part of the reason why I'm writing a fantasy, too, is I'm hoping I'll get Becky to read it, because she loves fantasy. She's just not a big fan of science fiction, in books anyway. She loves them in movies. But part of it also is that she has a hard time, and this is totally legit because I would do the same thing. When she reads my words, she just hears me. And so she can't sink into Amelia, the 22-year-old sable girl flying a suit of armor, because all she hears is my voice. And she's so familiar with my writing and my creativity and my ideas that it's impossible for her to separate the two. One day, I have this plan. I'm going to write a book in secret. I'm going to somehow manage to not tell her about it at all. And I'm going to publish it under a pen name, use a different cover artist. And I'm going to give it to her and say, I read this fantastic book. You'll love it. And then I'll get an honest opinion and see what she says. And, of course, if you find out that I committed suicide, then you know why, what happened.
Suicide.
Yeah.
Because she might kill you if she found out that you went to another cover artist. I'm just saying.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That could be dangerous. You may have to hire her under a pen name, create a fake email account and get a separate PayPal account and be like, hi, I need to hire you for an illustration. My name is not Jeff.
I heard you do good covers. Can you help? Yeah.
Well, now she's at the point, too, where it's really exciting watching her work because I learned a lot about business from her. She's really, really smart business-wise. She has this, she didn't come up with it, but she discovered this theory about Tier 1 versus Tier 2 business. Tier 1 is when you're trying to get anybody you can to buy your stuff. So you offer these huge discounts. And then Tier 2 is when you're like, you can afford me or you can't. And, of course, the goal is to get to Tier 2. And so she helped me do that with my books. I was charging $2.99 for my books when I first started publishing because I was like, who's going to pay $4.99? They don't know me. Superhero books, whatever. Now, I'm a firm believer that length and price have nothing to do with each other, nothing at all. But quality and name recognition clearly matter. So when I was thinking about raising my book prices to $3.99, she's like, no, raise them to $4.99. And you'll, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does work, you'll get to Tier 2. You'll get people who who are very invested in your work. And that's what happens when you spend $4.99 for a book. You want to like it. If you spend 99 cents for a book, I mean, I can't tell you how many times authors tell me they get terrible reviews after doing a book club or whatever, because you just don't value a book that's 99 cents. You don't value a book that's free because you don't value rental cars. You know, you rent a car, you trash it. It doesn't matter. It's not your car. Same thing with free books. Same thing with 99 cents. So, yeah. So she's the one who really elevated my business model up, and she's 90% of the reason I have success today is because of her inspiration and her encouragement and her faith in me.
Nice, very good. All right, well, I think that is an excellent place to leave this. So thank you very much for so much of your time. I'm gonna.
We didn't get to everything you wanted. Do you want to do like a part 2 down the road? Like,
I think I do. I think I do want to do a part 2. I'm just looking at my. The reason why I keep on looking down there is I've got a whole bunch of show notes down there, and I think we've covered. Yep. I think we've covered about 80% of that, but I've got a whole bunch of new questions I want to ask. So we'll do a part 2 of this, if that's all right.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm always like, honestly, I love doing interviews. I'm the one who approached Lindsay about being on her show like multiple times. Guys at the Sci-Fi Shenanigans and what's the other one I was on? The Nerds one. I forget the name of it now. But I love doing this stuff. I love talking about the process and writing, and hopefully, if somebody who hears it and says like I want to be a writer, they can look at me who does not have a college degree, who barely graduated high school, and was a grunt in the Army, now making a better living than I ever did doing anything else as a writer. That that will inspire them and say, well, like, hey, if that guy can do it, I can do it, which is absolutely true. Our success is entirely up to us, and that's really nice and really terrifying at the same time.
Nice. All right, man. Well, thank you for that. I will get this produced and cranked online, and I will be back in touch about part 2.
Awesome. All right. Hey, thanks so much, Richard. I really appreciate it. And, don't forget, everybody, read Taiki. It's the best Firefly book.
Thank you. All right, man. I'll catch you later.
Later, bro.